Thank you very much. I'm really excited to be here. You know, this is such an exciting event. We're going to talk about 4 very big things today: a healthier world, a fairer world, a safer world, and a happier world. And you're going to get lots of ideas and get very excited. But I want to start with the one endeavor that cuts across all 4 of those. Because if we get this one right, it's going to make it a whole hell of a lot easier on the other 4, and that's education. Nothing will do more to advance those 4 themes globally or in the United States than if we get education right. And so that's why I think it's appropriate to start there. But I want to start with what's a very cold shower, which is today in America and throughout large parts of the world, we don't have education remotely right. The people in this room, that's a different story. But for most kids growing up in America today, we are not educating them to the level they will need to compete effectively and participate in a fairer, healthier, safer, and happier world in the 21st century. And nothing can do more to undermine the future of this country and its relationship to a global world than if we continue on the path we're on. One thing you've got to understand, and people miss this, is that the world that I grew up in, and some of the other people in this room who are a little older, was an entirely different world. When I started public school in New York City in 1951, 60+% of our workforce were high school dropouts. Today that number is 6% and declining. So if you hold your educational attainment constant and you realize the demands of the marketplace are escalating, what you realize is you have an underprepared citizenry. Those tolls impact most kids who grow up in poverty, which in America today are largely children of color, although increasingly impacting our entire society. If we had an honest, get your head around this, if we had an honest high school graduation rate, not the inflated one we tolerate for political reasons, it would be about a third. About a third of our kids are ready for college when they graduate high school today. And according to the ACT and the SAT people and the College Board, that number is probably closer to a quarter or even 20% in many respects. So we are missing the mark greatly. But I want to start with a very personal concept, because we sit up here not far from Harlem, and I want this to resonate with you deep in your DNA, so you walk out of here passionate about changing K-12 public education in America. I was Chancellor for almost a decade. I would ask people like people in this room, privileged people, people who are here at Columbia, I would say to them, what percent of you would allow me, what percent of the public schools in New York would you send your own kid to? I just met a parent of one of the kids in this school. The most anyone ever said was 25%. Most people said 5 or 10%. Think about that. That means that others' children, what we used to call OPCs, other people's children, would go to 75 or 90% of schools that none of you would have allowed your own children to go to, because you would insist on something better. And those are the people who have the least chance and the least opportunity in our society. The kids with the greatest needs are going to schools that if you had kids, you wouldn't send your kids to right now. That's fundamentally unfair and broken. And so all I ask of you is to insist for every kid in every community of every color and every zip code that they go to a school that you'd send your own kid to. If we get there, we will have solved the problem. Now, the implications of that problem are becoming enormous in our society. So McKinsey did a study and showed that the educational gaps impose on this country the equivalent of a permanent national recession. But this is not just an economics issue. I was recently privileged to co-chair a task force for the Council on Foreign Relations with Secretary Condoleezza Rice. And we found 30 people came together, different views, found that this was a national security crisis. That in fact, the undereducated population damages the ability of the United States to physically defend itself and grow its economy. But more importantly, it's eroding the glue. Socioeconomic mobility, the thing we call the American dream. Many of you came here for it, for the American dream, right? What Secretary Rice used to say, in America, it's not where you come from. It's where you're going to. But that's increasingly becoming a myth. And the reason it's a myth is we are not educating our kids to give them the opportunities they need. And that's why this is becoming not simply an economic, but really a national security crisis. If that glue doesn't exist, what binds our society together? Now, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on statistics, but I want to show you two charts that I hope focus your attention on the nature of the problem. Let me look at this one. These are 12th grade math and reading scores, apples to apples, from 1970 to 2008 in math and in English language arts or reading. And what do you see? Fundamentally flatline. Now that means that as demands in our society increase, our performance is staying the same. And it's not about money. Look at how much we've doubled in real dollars, more than 2.5 times from 70 to 2008, and yet the results are flatline. There's been some gains in the lower grades, but those gains don't sustain themselves, so they don't really matter because we care about what kids leave the 12th grade. This is a broken model. We stay on this course, we can spend forever and stay down here and fail. And when you mix that with the global implications, you start to see how serious this is. We spend $11,000 per kid in 2008. That number's higher today. Outspend every other country. Do we outperform them? Not even close. U.S. is down here in math on the international test. That's almost 60-point difference between us and Korea. That's 2 years of learning. The average kid in Korea in math at age 13 is 2 years ahead of the average American kid. And people in Canada are a full year ahead. People in Finland almost 2 years ahead. These are dramatic. So don't let people tell you we have a small problem or that somehow we're close to where we need to go. We are not. And if we stay on the path where we're on, we're going to end up continuing to look just like this. So that's the dimensions of the problem. Now I want to talk in quick terms on a solution. There are two ideas that are more traditional and matter. They're controversial and difficult and by themselves won't get there, but I want to touch on them to set the frame for what I think is the third and the big idea, the one we really ought to get behind if we want to drive a transformative change. The first idea is choice. And I put this slide up because it reflects Harlem. What I mean by choice is what I was talking about before. How many of our schools would you send your kids to? 25% or 20%? You want choice. Those of you who came to Columbia didn't just take your neighborhood or zip code school. You chose a school that you thought was right for you. Parents, whether they're rich, poor, or in the middle, want choices for their kids. Right now, by and large, for the underprivileged in America, it is one and done, and that won't work. That doesn't mean every charter school is a good school. That doesn't mean vouchers are the answer. What it means is give people choices. Let them decide the destiny for their kids. There are two communities in America right now where there's robust choice. One is New Orleans because of Katrina, and the other is Harlem because of what Mayor Bloomberg set out to do. And here's an example of a good story. From 2006 to 2012, 12 years, there are 32 school districts in New York. If the geographic district of Harlem were a school district, in 2006 it was 28th and went down almost 2 per year. It is now 16th. That's enormous progress. Traditional public schools went from 28th in math down to 22nd, so they made big gains. Charter schools in Harlem, high poverty, high minority school district, are number 4 out of 32 in the city. Similar numbers in math. So you see here where choice, where almost a third of all Harlem kids are in charters, choice has become the driver of dramatic change across the system. 28 to 16, 28 to 18. You see similar results in New Orleans. Second big idea, Al Shanker, the iconic head of the American Federation of Teachers, who brought collective bargaining to teaching and made it into the most powerful trade union in the public sector in America today. What he said is right. In 1985, we still haven't observed it, creating a profession out of teaching. Otherwise, we're going to fail to preserve public education and to improve the status. Teaching is now a trade union. We have got to make it into a profession. Ed schools have got to insist on rigorous admissions requirements, not everybody with a pulse. They've got to have demanding academic curricula, not focusing only on pedagogy, but on math and in science, the English language arts, and so forth. We have got to have rigorous requirements for entry into the profession, and we have got to reward merit, not simply longevity. The countries I showed you before, Korea, Singapore, Japan, that are doing really well, those countries treat teachers the same way they treat other learned professions, and teachers are revered. In Japan, they're called sensei, which is a title that connotes excellence. In America, we haven't got there yet. Until we get there, we won't succeed. Teaching has got to become a revered profession, and we have got to go through the process of transforming it. But even if we do those two things, we still won't succeed unless we precipitate a digital revolution. In K-12, teachers are crucial. I just said that. But mining many thousands in the next few years won't happen. Technology is likely the missing ingredient based on evidence that there are better ways to learn. Getting the good teachers to amplify their skills is the only solution. You can't produce enough. This is the core going thing. Think about all of you who are sitting out there with your Apple Airbooks and so forth. All of you understand how technology has transformed your life. The apps you now use, things that I couldn't imagine when I was your age, those apps are driving an information, a technological revolution, and yet the schools are isolated. This parent I talked to worked with a project called Mouse, bringing technologies to schools, couldn't even get her own school to adopt it. Emblematic of the fact that in K-12 education is a sign on the door. We are an innovation-free zone, and we have got to flip that. If you see what Sal Khan is doing at the Khan Academy, if you look at these MOOCs, massive open online courses in post-secondary, radically transforming the way we think about educating. And we have got to bring that to K-12. We have got to move from an innovation-free to an innovation-driven K-12 society. And there's three things that technology can truly do for us. First of all, customize. One teacher with 28 kids trying to find the sweet spot, some way ahead, some behind, an impossible challenge. Technology can enable me to move those kids who are accelerated, go fast, go quickly. Those kids that are slow, get them remediated. You can differentiate instruction in a way we've never been able to do it before. Think of the power. I met a kid in a program called A School of One, which did this differentiation. In the middle of January, he moved from 8th grade to 9th grade math. Think of how much time that kid would have wasted if he had to stay in an 8th grade classroom when he was prepared to do the work in half a year. Second thing technology can do is change the function of teacher. We expect teachers to do everything. And then when we don't get the results we want, we complain about them. But the truth of the matter is we don't empower teachers, we don't support them, we don't give them the tools that they need. There's so much that technology could do. Make it more efficient. One click to take attendance rather than having to go through the classroom, write it out, submit it. Learn from other people's lessons. American Federation of Teachers has a website now called sharemylesson.org. If you're a brilliant Shakespearean scholar, why shouldn't I know about you? Why shouldn't I see your lesson plan? Why should each teacher be an isolated entity? Technology can drive that. And the third, and in my view, the most important thing, it can bring new, entirely different, immersive, gamified, exciting content. Sal Khan doing great stuff, but he is 1.0 in what can happen here. I can show you education games now that engage kids at the same time that they instruct them. I can show you curriculum that puts a kid deep inside the human brain to understand exactly what is going on out there. These are doable things, but in a K-12 monopoly system, innovation is resisted. I think teachers will lead the charge on embracing these changes. I've never been more optimistic. But let me end on this critically sober note. What I showed you in the first half is a broken education system. It's not going to impact you. You're here, you're going to be fine. But I hope you believe what I believe. It's going to impact a nation we love. Unless we're prepared to change the way we're doing things in a basic way, think seriously about choice, professionalization, and most importantly, precipitated technological revolution. What I fear will happen is this precious thing called the American dream can become the American memory on our watch. Shame on us if we allow that to happen. Thank you for being here today.